The large silver ship hung in Earth's orbit, hidden behind the moon. Inside, Captain Taiho stood tall, his blue skin catching the light as he looked at the blue-green planet on the main screen. "So this is the Deathworld," he said. His voice was deep and calm. "It doesn't look very dangerous." The bridge of the Koryo scout vessel was quiet. The crew worked at their stations, taking readings of Earth. They had found many worlds with life before, but this one was different. The readings showed strange things. Intelligence Officer Juwu moved to stand beside her captain. She was smaller than him, but her eyes showed she was smart and careful. "Captain, the readings confirm this is a Class 5 Deathworld," she said. "The gravity is 1.2 times stronger than our homeworld. The atmosphere has high oxygen levels. The life forms have evolved under harsh conditions." Taiho waved his hand like her words were not important. "We have seen harsh worlds before. Our armor has protected us on all of them." He touched the chest plate of his battle suit with pride. The Koryo battle armor was famous across the galaxy. No weapon had ever broken through it. It was their greatest achievement, the reason their small species had become so powerful. "Show me these humans," Taiho ordered. The screen changed to show different images of Earth, cities with tall buildings, people walking on streets, cars moving on roads. "They seem primitive," said Taiho. "They haven't even left their own planet properly." Dongjin, the lead scientist, joined them at the screen. "Primitive, but interesting. Their bodies are dense with muscle. Their bones are thick. Their blood carries oxygen very well." He sounded excited. "I would like to study one." Jumu looked worried. "Captain, I must advise caution. Our probes show that even the weakest human adult can lift more than twice what our strongest warriors can. They evolved on a world with predators we can barely imagine." Taiho laughed. "And yet they have no energy weapons, no space fleet, no shield technology. What can they do against our armor? Against our technology?" He turned to face his crew. They all wore the same armor, silver and blue, with the symbol of the Galactic Confederation on their shoulders. For 1,000 years, the Koryo had never lost a battle. Not once. "We will establish a small research outpost in a remote area," Taiho decided. "We will take some specimens for study. When we understand them better, the Confederation will decide if they are worthy of contact." Dongjin smiled. "I know just the place. An area they call South Korea. The population density is good for taking a specimen without being noticed." Juwu tried one more time. "Captain, perhaps we should observe longer before." "My decision is made," Taiho said firmly. "Prepare the landing team. Scientist Dongjin will lead the research. Scientist Haijin will assist. Officer Minja will provide security." The crew moved quickly to obey. Only Juwu stayed behind, looking at the images of humans on the screen. "They don't look dangerous," she said quietly to herself. "But neither does a cornered animal until it attacks." Taiho heard her. "Don't worry so much, Juwu. How dangerous can they be? Our armor has never failed us." The ship moved from behind the moon, heading toward Earth under cover of night. Soon, a small shuttle broke away from the main ship, descending toward the Korean peninsula. Inside the shuttle, Officer Minji checked his weapon. "This will be easy," he said. "Grab a human, study it, and be done." Scientist Haijin wasn't so sure. "Remember, we're here to learn," she said, "not to harm." The shuttle entered Earth's atmosphere, invisible to human technology. Below, in a small apartment in Seoul, military engineer Sunwoo worked late into the night, unaware that his life was about to change forever. Sunwoo walked home along the quiet street. It was past midnight, and the moon was hidden behind clouds. He was tired after working late at the military research center. His job was to test and improve body armor for soldiers. It was important work, but tonight his mind was on simpler things: food and sleep. He stopped when he saw a strange blue light in the sky. At first, he thought it was a helicopter. Then the light grew brighter, and he realized it was not moving like any aircraft he knew. What is that? He whispered to himself. Suddenly, a beam of light shot down and surrounded him. Sun Wu tried to move, but his body would not obey. He felt like he was floating. The street below him grew smaller. Fear filled his chest as he realized he was being lifted into the air. Inside the alien shuttle, scientist Haijin watched the screen as the human was pulled into their holding chamber. Capture successful, Officer Minji said. He sounded bored. That was easy. Be careful, Haijin warned. We don't know how it will react. Dongjin laughed. It's just a primitive creature. Our containment cell can hold beings twice its strength. The shuttle rose back into the night sky, heading to the hidden outpost the Koryo had built in the mountains outside the city. No human would find it, protected as it was by their advanced technology. Sun Wu woke up in a small room with smooth metal walls. A clear barrier, like glass but somehow different, formed one wall of his prison. Through it, he could see strange beings with blue skin and large eyes watching him. His heart beat fast with fear, but the engineer part of his brain was already working, studying everything around him. The room had no visible door. The air felt slightly different to breathe. The light came from the walls themselves. Aliens, he said to himself. I've been taken by aliens. On the other side of the barrier, Haijin watched the human with interest. It's awake, she said, and it doesn't seem as afraid as I expected. Dongjin moved closer to the barrier. Good specimen. Strong physical build. Male, according to our research. How do you know it's not plotting something? Minji asked. He kept his hand on his weapon. What could it plot? Dongjin laughed again. The barrier can withstand impacts from creatures that can lift 500 kilograms. This human couldn't possibly break through. Sun Wu couldn't understand their words, but he watched how they moved and interacted. He noticed that one of the aliens, smaller than the others, seemed to look at him differently. Not like he was an animal, but like he was a person. He stood up slowly and walked to the barrier. The alien with the weapon tensed. Sun Wu raised his hand in a peaceful gesture. My name is Sun Wu, he said clearly. I am an engineer. The aliens made sounds to each other that Sun Wu couldn't understand. Haijin recorded the human sounds. It's trying to communicate, she said. Don't get attached, Dongjin warned. Remember, this is just a study. Captain Taho wants information about humans before the Confederation decides what to do with this planet. Minji touched his armor proudly. Whatever they decide, these creatures won't be a problem. Look at it. No natural armor. No claws. If they resist, our armor will protect us, as it always has. Sun Wu watched them carefully. Though he couldn't understand their language, he understood the tone of the one touching its chest covering. It was pride, overconfidence. As an engineer who tested armor for weaknesses, Sun Wu recognized armor when he saw it. He looked at how it connected at the joints, how it moved when the alien moved. Every armor had weaknesses. That was the first rule he learned in his job. Haijin noticed how the human's eyes followed Minji's movements, studying the armor with unexpected focus. I think, she said quietly, we should be more careful about what we assume. But no one was listening to her. 7 days passed. Sun Wu sat quietly in his cell, watching and listening. The aliens did not know that he was learning. Every time they spoke near his cell, he remembered their sounds and matched them to their actions. He learned that the smaller alien who seemed kinder was called Haijin. The one who looked at him like he was an insect was Dongjin. The one with the weapon who guarded him was Minja. Sun Wu also learned about his own body in this place. He felt lighter here. When the aliens weren't watching, he tested his strength by jumping. He could jump higher than he ever could on Earth. When he pushed against the floor, his muscles seemed stronger. Different gravity, he whispered to himself. Their world must have less gravity than Earth. In another room, Haijin looked at the test results on her screen. She turned to Dongjin with concern on her face. These readings can't be right, she said. According to this, the human's muscle density is 3 times greater than ours. His bone structure is twice as dense. Dongjin looked at the screen. That matches what we know about Deathworld species. They evolve stronger bodies to survive harsh conditions. But look at his behavior, Haijin said. She showed him recordings of Sunwoo. He's not just reacting. He's thinking, observing. I believe he's even learning our language. Dongjin laughed. Impossible. It's been only 7 days. I want to try something, Haijin said. She walked to Sunwoo's cell with Dongjin following. Sunwoo sat up straight when they approached. He had been doing push-ups when they weren't watching, keeping his body strong. Haijin pointed to herself. Haijin, she said clearly. Sunwoo nodded. Haijin, he repeated. She looked surprised. Then she pointed to different objects in the room, saying their names in her language. Sunwoo repeated each word perfectly. Dongjin's large eyes widened. It's just mimicking sounds, like a bird. Haijin shook her head. She held up 2 objects and said a new word. Choose. Sunwoo understood. He pointed to the object on the right. Incredible, Haijin said. He understands context. He's learning faster than any species we've encountered. This changes nothing, Dongjin said. Captain Taho wants test results, not language lessons. As they argued, Minjae entered the room. Time for the physical tests, he said. He pressed a button that made part of the clear barrier slide open. It was just big enough for Sunwoo to walk through. Come, Minjae said to Sunwoo, making a gesture with his hand. Sunwoo understood. He stood and walked toward the opening. As he passed through, he felt the edge of the barrier. It was strong but thin. He filed this information away in his mind. Minjae led him to a room with strange machines. Haijin was there, but Dongjin was not. Run, Haijin said, pointing to a machine like a treadmill. Sunwoo ran. The machine measured his speed and endurance. He could run much faster here than on Earth, but he decided to hold back. He ran at what would be a normal pace on Earth. Haijin looked confused at the readings. Faster, she said. Sunwoo ran a little faster, but still not his full speed. When the tests were done, Minjae took Sunwoo back to his cell. Sunwoo noticed that Minjae never came too close to him. The alien kept his distance, one hand always near his weapon. They're afraid of me, Sunwoo realized. Even with their armor and weapons, they're cautious. Later that night, when the lights dimmed, Sunwoo heard soft footsteps. Haijin approached his cell alone. Human, she said quietly. Sunwoo. He looked up, surprised that she knew his name. He must have told them when he was first captured. Haijin, he replied. She looked around to make sure no one was watching. Then she spoke slowly in her language, making gestures to help him understand. For the first time, Sunwoo began to truly communicate with one of his captors. On the 15th day of his captivity, Sunwoo noticed something different. The lights in his cell flickered briefly. It happened 3 times over several hours. Each time, he felt a change in the air, like the barrier holding him weakened for just a moment. Power problem, he thought. His engineer's mind quickly understood what was happening. Something was wrong with their power system. That night, when the base was quieter, it happened again. The lights dimmed, and Sunwoo felt the barrier weaken. This time, he was ready. He counted in his head. 1, 2, 3. The lights flickered. He ran at the barrier with all his strength and pushed through it. There was resistance, like moving through thick water, but then he was free. An alarm sounded immediately. Red lights flashed in the hallway. Sunwoo had no plan beyond this moment, but he knew he had to move fast. He ran down the hallway, trying to remember the path to the room where they had tested him. He turned a corner and found himself in a large room filled with strange equipment. It looked like the control center for the base. 3 Koryo aliens stared at him in shock. How did it escape? One of them shouted. Sunwoo didn't wait. He ran toward what looked like a door on the far side of the room. But before he could reach it, More aliens rushed in. Among them was Minjae, now fully dressed in the shining armor that the Koryo were so proud of. "Stop," Minjae ordered, pointing his weapon at Sunwoo. Sunwoo paused, looking for another way out. There was none. He was trapped. "Back to your cell, human," Minjae said, his words now partially understandable to Sunwoo after days of learning their language. Sunwoo knew he had one chance. He lowered his head like he was giving up. Then, without warning, he charged directly at Minjae. The alien fired his weapon, but Sunwoo moved faster than they expected. The energy blast hit the wall behind him. Before Minjae could fire again, Sunwoo crashed into him with all his strength. They fell to the floor together. The other aliens backed away, surprised by the human's speed and force. Minjae tried to push Sunwoo off, but found the human was much stronger than their tests had shown. "Impossible," Minjae gasped as Sunwoo grabbed his armored arm. Sunwoo remembered everything he knew about armor design. He looked for the weak point, the joint where the arm piece connected to the shoulder. He gripped it and pulled with all his might. There was a sound like metal bending. The aliens watching gasped in shock. "The armor," one of them cried out. "He's damaging the armor." Minjae finally managed to throw Sunwoo off. He stood up, breathing hard, and looked down at his shoulder. There, in the perfect armor that had never been broken, was a small dent. "This can't be," Minjae said, touching the damaged spot with disbelief. Sunwoo prepared to fight again, but he never got the chance. 2 more guards entered and fired their weapons together. Sunwoo felt a wave of energy hit him, and his muscles stopped working. He fell to the floor, unable to move but still conscious. Captain Taeho entered the room. He looked at Sunwoo on the floor, then at Minjae's damaged armor. "What happened here?" he demanded. "The human escaped when the power fluctuated," one of the aliens explained. "Then it attacked Officer Minjae." Taeho looked at the dent in the armor. "And this?" Minjae hesitated. "A malfunction, Captain. The armor must have been damaged during the struggle." "A malfunction," Taeho repeated, not sounding convinced. "Take the human back to its cell. Double the guards." As they carried Sunwoo away, Haijin watched from the doorway. She had seen everything. She had seen Sunwoo move faster than any of them expected. She had seen him damage the armor that was supposed to be unbreakable. And she had seen the fear in Minjae's eyes when he realized what had happened. "They don't understand what they're dealing with," she whispered to herself. 3 days after his escape attempt, Sunwoo sat in his new cell. This one had a stronger barrier. 2 guards stood outside at all times. They watched him carefully, their hands always near their weapons. Sunwoo pretended to sleep, but his mind was working. He had learned important things during his escape. The layout of part of the base, the weakness in the Koryo armor, and most importantly, that he was stronger than they thought. The door to the outer room opened. Sunwoo heard Haijin's voice. "I need to run more tests on the human," she told the guards. "Captain's orders." "Be careful," one guard warned. "This one is dangerous." Haijin entered alone. She carried a small device. When the door closed behind her, she looked at the guards through the window, then pressed something on the device. The red light on the camera in the corner turned off. "We can talk now," she said in her language, speaking slowly so Sunwoo could understand. "They cannot hear us." Sunwoo sat up. "Why are you helping me?" he asked in simple words from her language. Haijin sat down across from him, the barrier still between them. "What you did to Minjae's armor, it was impossible. Our armor has never been damaged in 1,000 years of war." "Not impossible," Sunwoo said, "just difficult. Dongjun wants to hurt you now. Study your strength by cutting you open." Her face showed disgust. "That is wrong." Sunwoo understood. Scientist Dongjun wanted to dissect him. "I want to go home," Sunwoo said simply. "I know." Haijin hesitated. "Tell me about your home, your family." Sunwoo was surprised, but he began to speak. He told her about his parents, his sister, his work designing armor for soldiers. He used simple words from her language mixed with his own. Hyjin listened carefully. You make armor too, like ours, not like yours. Simpler, but I understand armor. All armor has weak points. Hyjin nodded. I believe you are not what my people think. You are not a simple animal. You are a person. So are you, Sunwoo said, not like the others. They talked for a long time. Hyjin told him about her world, about the Galactic Confederation, about how the Koryo were feared because of their armor. No weapon could break it. No enemy could defeat them. Until you, she said, Minja lies about the dent. He says his armor was already damaged, but I saw. Everyone saw. What will happen to me? Sunwoo asked. Hyjin looked down. Captain Tahoe has asked for more scientists from our world. They will come in 10 days. When they arrive, Dongjun will start his cutting tests. Sunwoo felt cold fear in his chest. I must leave before then. Yes, Hyjin said, surprising him. I will help you. Why? Sunwoo asked. Because it's right, she said simply, and because my people need to learn that we are not as powerful as we think. Over the next days, Hyjin came to his cell often, always turning off the cameras. She brought him maps of the base drawn on thin paper that he could hide. She told him about the guard schedules, the security systems where the shuttles were kept. Sunwoo shared his own knowledge. He drew designs of Earth's aircraft, explained human technology, taught her words from his language. They formed a connection that neither had expected. There is a maintenance period in 7 days, Hyjin told him on her 5th visit. The power will go down for exactly 2 minutes to reset. That is when we must move. We? Sunwoo asked. You're coming with me. Hyjin looked away. If I help you, I cannot stay here. They will know. Sunwoo understood what she was risking. I will protect you, he promised. Hyjin smiled sadly. On my world, we have a saying. Even the strongest armor cannot protect against betrayal. As she left, Sunwoo wondered what she meant. He didn't have to wait long to find out. 2 days before the planned escape, Hyjin came to Sunwoo's cell late at night. Her face looked worried. She turned off the camera as usual. Everything is ready, she whispered. I have programmed the shuttle. I know how to fly it to your country. We leave during the maintenance period. Sunwoo nodded. He had memorized the maps she brought him. He knew exactly which halls to take, which doors to go through. He had even practiced in his mind how to fight if needed. Thank you, he said in her language. You risk much to help me. Hyjin touched the barrier between them. My people are wrong about humans. You are not animals to study. You err. The door behind her opened suddenly. Dongjun stood there with 2 guards. His face showed anger and triumph. I knew it, he said. I knew you were helping it. Hyjin stepped back, her eyes wide with fear. Dongjun, I can explain. Explain what? Treason. Dongjun looked at the device in her hand that turned off the camera. How long have you been planning this? What have you told this creature? Sunwoo stood up, pressing his hands against the barrier. Leave her alone, he said in the Koryo language. Dongjun looked shocked to hear Sunwoo speak. It speaks our language. This is worse than I thought. He turned to the guards. Take Scientist Hyjin to the holding cell. She is a traitor. The guards grabbed Hyjin. She did not fight back, but her eyes met Sunwoo's with sadness and apology. I'm sorry, she said as they took her away. When they were gone, Dongjun came closer to Sunwoo's barrier. You have corrupted one of our scientists. You have damaged our armor. You are too dangerous to keep alive. Sunwoo felt cold fear, but he did not show it. What will you do? Captain Tahoe has ordered your termination, Dongjun said with satisfaction. Tomorrow, you will be taken to the disposal chamber. After Dongjun left, Sunwoo sat in the dark. His mind raced. The escape plan was ruined. Hyjin was captured. He would be killed tomorrow. I must act alone now, he thought. The next morning, 4 guards came to his cell. All wore full armor. One of them was Minja. His shoulder piece had been replaced, but Sun Wu could see he was nervous. The barrier was lowered, and 2 guards pointed weapons at him. Move, Minji ordered, to the disposal chamber. Sun Wu walked slowly, guards in front and behind him. He looked at everything as they walked, searching for any chance to escape. But there were too many guards, too many weapons pointed at him. They arrived at a large room with a metal platform in the center. Captain Taho and Dongjun were waiting. So this is the human that caused so much trouble, Taho said, looking at Sun Wu with cold eyes. Where is Haijin? Sun Wu demanded. The traitor will be dealt with after you, Taho replied. She will be sent back to our homeworld for judgment. Minja pushed Sun Wu onto the platform. Any last words, human? He asked, his voice mocking. Before we show you how superior our technology is. Sun Wu said nothing. He looked at the armored aliens surrounding him. 4 guards, plus Minja, Dongjun, and Captain Taho. Too many to fight. Nothing to say. Minja continued. He reached up and removed his helmet, wanting to look Sun Wu in the eyes as he died. Your kind will never understand the superiority of the Koryo. Our armor alone makes us invincible. No human weapon could ever. It was the moment Sun Wu had been waiting for. With Minji's face exposed, there was a chance, a small chance. Sun Wu moved faster than any of them expected. He lunged forward and slammed his forehead into Minji's unprotected face. There was a crack like a broken stick. Minji dropped to the floor, unconscious, blue blood flowing from his nose. Stop him, Taho shouted. The other guards rushed forward, weapons ready. Sun Wu knew he had only seconds to live, but as the guards reached for him, something deep inside him changed. Something primal, something born on a world more dangerous than any the Koryo had ever known. For the first time since his capture, Sun Wu stopped holding back. Time seemed to slow down for Sun Wu. The guards rushed toward him, their armored bodies moving in what felt like slow motion. His heart pounded in his chest. Each beat sent a wave of strength through his body. Evolved on a planet with higher gravity, stronger predators, and harsher conditions than the Koryo could imagine, Sun Wu's body was a product of Earth's unforgiving nature. Now that Deathworld's strength fully awakened, the first guard reached him. Sun Wu didn't try to dodge. Instead, he moved directly toward the guard, his hands reaching for the armor covering the alien's chest. Restrain him, Captain Taho shouted from across the room. But it was too late. Sun Wu's fingers found the seam where the chest plate connected to the shoulder piece. With a roar that came from deep within, he pulled. The sound of metal tearing filled the room. The guard screamed as his perfect armor that had protected the Koryo for 1,000 years, split apart in the human's hands. Everyone in the room froze. Even Dongjun, who had been so sure of their superiority, stepped back in shock. Impossible, he whispered. The guard fell back, looking at his torn armor in horror. The other guards hesitated, suddenly afraid. Sun Wu didn't wait. He grabbed a piece of the torn armor and held it like a weapon. Then he charged at the next guard. This one tried to shoot him, but Sun Wu was too fast. He ducked under the energy blast and rammed into the guard with his shoulder. As they fell, Sun Wu's hands found the weak points in the alien's armor. With strength born from Earth's higher gravity, he tore plates away from the screaming guard. Stop him, Taho ordered, pulling out his own weapon. Use maximum power. 2 energy blasts hit Sun Wu in the back. Pain burned through his body, but it only made him angrier. He turned to face the guards who had shot him, his eyes wild with the rage of a cornered animal. The guards backed away, firing again. Sun Wu used the piece of armor in his hand to block the blasts. Then he threw it like a disc. It hit one guard in the helmet, cracking the visor. Before the aliens could react, Sun Wu was among them. His hands moved with terrible purpose. finding joints, seams, and connection points in their armor. Metal screeched as it was bent and torn. Pieces of the legendary Koryo armor fell to the floor. One guard tried to run. Sun Wu caught him and lifted him completely off the ground. The Koryo were lighter than humans, evolved in lower gravity. Sun Wu spun the guard around and threw him at Captain Taiho. They crashed together and fell. Taiho's weapon skidded across the floor. Only Dongjin remained standing. He stared at Sun Wu with terror in his large eyes. Around them lay 4 guards with their armor in pieces. Minjae was still unconscious. Captain Taiho was trying to get up. "You?" Dongjin could barely speak. "What are you?" Sun Wu stepped toward him. "I am human," he said in the Koryo language. "From Earth, a death world." Dongjin backed away until he hit the wall. "The armor. No one has ever." "Your mistake," Sun Wu said, "was thinking your armor made you strong." He picked up a torn piece from the floor. Armor is only as strong as the body inside it. Captain Taiho had managed to stand. He looked at the destruction around him. His guards defeated, their legendary armor in pieces, torn apart by bare hands. "Stop," he said, raising his hands. "Please." Sun Wu turned to him. "Where is Haijin?" "Cell block C," Taiho said quickly. "I'll take you to her." "No," Sun Wu replied. "You will stay here." He picked up one of the guards' weapons, then looked at Dongjin. "You too." Sun Wu backed toward the door, keeping the weapon pointed at them. As he reached the doorway, alarms began to sound. Someone had triggered a security alert. "You'll never escape," Dongjin said, finding some courage now that Sun Wu was leaving. "The entire base will be looking for you." Sun Wu looked at the pieces of armor scattered across the floor. "Let them come," he said. "Let them all see what a human can do." Then he was gone, running through the corridors towards Cell Block C, leaving behind the first Koryo in history to see their perfect armor fail. Red lights flashed throughout the base. A voice spoke over the speakers in the Koryo language. "Alert! Dangerous specimen loose. All personnel to battle stations." Sun Wu ran through the corridors, following the map in his mind that Haijin had given him. Cell Block C was 2 levels down. He had to hurry before more guards arrived. At an intersection, 3 armored guards appeared, weapons raised. "Stop, or we will fire," one shouted. Sun Wu didn't stop. He charged directly at them. The guards fired, but Sun Wu dodged to the side. Before they could fire again, he was upon them. The first guard tried to hit Sun Wu with his weapon. Sun Wu caught the alien's arm and twisted. The armor cracked at the elbow joint. The second guard backed away, firing wildly. The third turned to run. Within moments, more pieces of Koryo armor lay on the floor. Sun Wu took no pleasure in the violence, but he would not be stopped. Not when Haijin's life was in danger too. 2 levels down, Sun Wu found Cell Block C. 2 guards stood outside a cell door. When they saw him, covered in sweat and holding pieces of broken armor, they raised their weapons. "The Deathworlder," one whispered in fear. Sun Wu dropped the armor pieces and raised his hands. "I don't want to hurt you," he said in their language, "but I will free Haijin." One guard fired. Sun Wu rolled forward under the blast. He came up right in front of the guard and grabbed the weapon. They struggled for a moment before Sun Wu's superior strength won. He tore the weapon free, along with pieces of the armor covering the guard's arms. The second guard tried to run. Sun Wu caught him and pushed him against the wall. "Open the cell," he ordered. The terrified guard pressed his hand to a panel. The door slid open. Inside, Haijin sat on a small bench. She looked up, her eyes widening when she saw Sun Wu. "How?" she began. "No time," Sun Wu said, pulling her to her feet. "We must go now." Haijin looked at the guards, one sitting on the floor cradling his damaged armor, the other pressed against the wall by Sun Wu. "What did you do?" "What you said was impossible," Sun Wu replied. "I broke their armor, many pieces, As they hurried back the way Sunwoo had come, they found the corridors strangely empty. The alarms still sounded, but no guards tried to stop them. "They're afraid," Haijin realized. "Word has spread about what you did." They reached a large door. According to Haijin's map, the shuttle bay was on the other side. Sunwoo pressed the panel, but nothing happened. "Locked," he said. "Stand back," said a voice behind them. Sunwoo pushed Haijin behind him and turned to face the new threat. But instead of guards, a single female Koryo stood there. It was Intelligence Officer Juu, the one who had warned Captain Taiho about underestimating humans. "Why would you help us?" Haijin asked. Juu stepped forward and pressed a code into the panel. The door began to open. "Because they need to learn," she said. "The Confederation needs to understand that there are forces in this galaxy that cannot be conquered. Deathworlders like the humans must be respected, not studied or hunted." Through the door, they could see 3 shuttles waiting in the bay. "Take the middle one," Juu said. "I've programmed it to return to your home. Before you go, there is one more thing you must do." She pointed to a room off the side of the shuttle bay. "The communication center. From there, you can send images of what happened here to the entire Confederation. Let them all see what a human can do to our armor." "Why would you want that?" Sunwoo asked. "Because I would rather have peace than war," Juu answered. "If the Confederation sees the truth now, they will not try to conquer Earth later." Sunwoo nodded. He understood. This was not just about his escape anymore. It was about protecting his entire planet. "I will do it," he said. As Sunwoo and Haijin moved toward the communication center, the sound of many footsteps came from a nearby corridor. More guards were coming, many more. "Hurry," Juu urged. "I will slow them down, but you must be quick." Sunwoo looked at the pieces of Koryo armor scattered along their escape route. He picked up a chest plate and held it in his hands. "Let them come," he said. "Let them all see." Sunwoo and Haijin reached the communication center. Inside were screens and control panels with strange symbols. Haijin moved quickly to one of the panels. "Here," she said. "This can send images to the entire Confederation network. Every ship, every base, every homeworld will see it." Sunwoo looked at the screens. One showed the disposal chamber where he had first torn apart the Koryo armor. The room was still a mess of broken armor pieces and unconscious guards. Another screen showed Captain Tao and Dongjun arguing while medical staff helped the injured guards. The base cameras recorded everything, Haijin said with wonder in her voice. "All of it." She pressed buttons on the panel. The largest screen showed a recording of Sunwoo tearing the chest plate from the first guard. Then it showed him breaking the arm pieces of another. Each image clearly showed what the Koryo had thought impossible, their perfect armor being destroyed by a human's bare hands. "Send it," Sunwoo said. "Send it all." Haijin pressed the final button. "Transmission complete. The entire Confederation will see this within minutes." The door to the communication center suddenly slid open. Juu stumbled in, holding her side where she had been injured. "The guards are coming," she gasped. "Many of them. You must leave now." Sunwoo helped her to a chair. "Come with us," he said. Juu shook her head. "No, my place is here. Someone must speak for peace when this is over." They heard shouts in the corridor outside. Time was running out. "Go," Juu urged. "Get to the shuttle." Sunwoo and Haijin ran from the communications center to the shuttle bay. The middle shuttle's door was open, waiting for them. As they reached it, a large group of armored guards burst into the bay. "Stop them," someone shouted. It was Captain Taiho, his face showing anger and fear. The guards moved forward slowly, clearly afraid after what they had seen Sunwoo do. Sunwoo picked up a piece of broken armor from the floor and held it up for all to see. "This is what happens when you cage a Deathworlder," he called out to them in their language. "Remember this day. Remember Earth." Then he turned and followed Haijin into the shuttle. The door closed behind them. Heijin moved to the controls and pressed a series of buttons. The shuttle's engines came to life. "They're not firing at us," she said with surprise, looking at the guards through the window. "They're just watching." The shuttle lifted off the floor. A large door opened in the ceiling of the bay, showing the night sky above. Slowly, the shuttle rose through the opening and into the darkness beyond. Inside the base, Captain Taho watched the shuttle disappear. Beside him, Dongjun was angry. "We should shoot them down," he shouted. "They cannot be allowed to escape." "It's too late," said Juwu, limping into the shuttle bay. "The transmission is complete. The entire Confederation has seen what happened here." As if to confirm her words, the communication panel on Taho's wrist beeped. It was a message from the Koryo High Command. Taho read it, and his face grew pale. "All plans for Earth occupation are cancelled," he read aloud. "The human world is to be classified as a no-contact zone. Captain Taho is ordered to close the research base immediately and return to Koryo Prime." Above Earth, the shuttle carrying Sunwoo and Heijin descended through the atmosphere. Heijin had set the controls for the coordinates of Sunwoo's home. "What will you do now?" Sunwoo asked her. "You can't go back to your people." "I will stay on Earth," she said. "Learn about humans. Maybe someday help build peace between our worlds." Sunwoo looked out the window as the shuttle broke through the clouds. Below, he could see the lights of his city. "My people will have many questions," he said. "Then we will answer them together," Heijin replied. "And perhaps one day, humans will join the stars not as specimens or enemies, but as equals." The shuttle continued its descent toward the sleeping city, carrying the first ambassador from the stars and the human who had changed the future of two worlds with his bare hands. In the vastness of space, the Koryo ships moved away from Earth orbit. On screens throughout the Galactic Confederation, the images of broken armor told a powerful story. Deathworlders were not to be underestimated, and Earth was not to be conquered. They had believed their armor could stop a Deathworlder, until a human tore it apart barehanded.